Hello everyone. We follow up on an issue that has captured the attention of people in Greece over the last few months, referring to the accusations of sexual harassment in sports and entertainment and other fields. And in this program, we're thrilled to present solutions-oriented voices, innovative minds in a moment where such issues have reached critical turning points. It is very refreshing to host Ms. Morgan Mercer today, a survivor of sexual violence herself, but also a 26-year-old entrepreneur whose virtual reality training company aims at tackling social issues from sexual harassment to biases in their workplace using technology. Morgan, thank you so much for taking the time to be on our show today.
Thank you for having me.
First, let me ask you, what was the driving force behind this idea? I assume you realized that conventional training around sexual harassment is not so effective and behaviors do not change easily. You can elaborate on that too, but aside from this, on a more personal level, how did this come about initially?
Absolutely. So I actually had my own personal experiences, and as I was recounting my experiences to friends and those around me, the thing that everybody would always say was, oh, that's happened to me too, right? And this was years and years and years ago. It was before #MeToo, because I actually thought of the company and thought of the concept at least 2 years before #MeToo happened. And so as I was going through this experience of telling people, what I realized is that women don't speak out unless they speak out in unison. And there are many reasons for that, from, the backlash that they face all the way to the disbelief that they face having to retell or recount the story, the emotional trauma that can cause for women to do so, etc. And then, of course, the lack of, I should say, the lack of care that's placed for actually ensuring that somebody who does harass somebody else or somebody who does perpetrate sexual violence is actually faced with some level of consequences. And so as I was sharing my story to all of my friends, they would say, oh, that's happened to me too. They would tell their stories, and some of the stories were downright mortifying and really horrifying to hear. And what I realized was a few things. I realized, that in order for people, meaning, other genders, other races, etc., to relate to problems, you have to have a similar baseline level understanding of feeling and emotion. Mm-hmm. And so it's really hard for a woman to explain their experience to a man, right? If a man has never had that set of experiences in the world. And so it's really hard to create empathy around that. It's really hard for somebody to step into somebody's shoes when they quite literally don't understand the feeling of frustration or the feeling of discomfort or the feeling of anger. And so it was, how do we actually create a shared perspective around a problem? How do we actually create shared feeling and shared emotion so that when men want to be better allies, or when, companies want to provide more effective training, they can actually do so. And then actually, as I started to unpack it and think about, okay, well, virtual reality as a medium has obviously created very emotionally compelling situations and scenarios. Historically, it's been used a lot, not only for things like fighter pilot simulations and surgical trainings, but also for simulations around entertainment sectors. How can we actually create something that is so emotionally compelling, places you in the shoes of somebody who's in a room where you can feel the elephant, in the room when something's uncomfortable, or when somebody does something that you can tell isn't right, but you can't quite place your finger on why it's not right. It just doesn't feel right. Mm-hmm. How do we recreate that scenario in a way that's safe and simulated and actually allows people to have the opportunity in a safe setting to practice different behaviors and practice different outcomes? And so I quite literally woke up with the idea for the company. It was, again, before #MeToo had actually started. And I was like, why don't we actually take virtual reality and put people into the shoes and then create these spaces where people can practice their behaviors?
Prior to starting your company, you said you were on a mission to reduce societal apathy through technology. And you did that by creating a tool that allows us to experience discomfort, as you said, firsthand, if I'm right, by using a headset or by getting people in the moment using virtual reality. And then through a series of quizzes, it makes people learn how to have better responses. I'm not sure if I'm describing it correctly, but can you walk us a little bit through the tool you have designed? How does it play out exactly?
Absolutely. And I love that you speak to the mission, just to start, because while we live in one of the most connected times in history, people still report high levels of loneliness across every generation. And so what we've seen is that while we have become increasingly connected through technology, technology actually pulls us apart. And there are a lot of really great resources around the behavioral psychology of how products are formed, right? They're meant to be addictive. They're meant to tap into different levels of dopamine, etc., to literally become addictive to people. And so while it seems like we're being pulled together, we're actually not. And so my whole premise is, how can we actually take technology and use it to its best or highest intention or highest form to bring people together, to create empathy, to create awareness, to create perspective. And so what we actually do is we take virtual reality headsets, the little headsets that you see that go on your head. They're completely standalone. You don't need to plug them into a computer. They're very easy to use. And so as you're immersed into a scenario, we use photorealistic characters. We're not using avatars, because it's very important to us that it feels realistic and it feels true to life. It needs to feel just like a real life scenario. And so instead of being in your apartment or in your home or in your office or wherever you may be, you're all of a sudden transported to an entirely different situation. You're placed right in the middle of something that's happening, right? So you could be placed in the middle of a office party or a conference room environment, or maybe, in the remote work days of COVID-19, you're placed in a socially distant setting in your office where you're having a discussion about a client meeting, right? And somebody passes by just to say a few words. And so as you're placed in the setting, the situation slowly starts to unfold. And we use, again, photorealistic characters who talk to you, who look at you, who engage with you. And this is really important because when you think about harassment, again, so much of it is contextual. It's not what's black and white. So it's not he said, she said. It's, harassment, because many times if you read something on paper, you'll say, okay, well, that could have been, perceived in this other way or whatever it may be. But if you're actually there, you can tell by the tonality, by the context of the conversation, by the context of the relationship, whether it be a colleague to coworker, whatever it may be, by the body language, that something is wrong. And so we actually use photorealistic characters who look at you, who talk to you, who invade your personal space, who might step a little bit too close, or who might say something in a tone that could be perceived in multiple ways. And so as a user, you are given the opportunity, or as an employee in the training, you're given an opportunity to speak up, step up, say something. So our goal is to always teach people that they have agency over the outcome. Whether you're a bystander, you can learn to be a better ally. You can learn to advocate more effectively, to speak up, to be more supportive, and to confront your biases in doing so, so that you can show up in a better way. And, if it's something where you're learning how to respond, you can learn how to report it. You can learn, how to navigate the situation, right? And so we're always teaching people that you have agency over ensuring that these kinds of behaviors aren't tolerated in society, more broadly. And so as you're given the opportunity to speak up, step up, say something, you're given a virtual cell phone. And on the virtual cell phone, your colleagues will actually text you, they'll call you, they'll ask you, hey, Morgan or so-and-so, does this feel like an okay situation? Alexia looks really, really uncomfortable here. And I feel like we should say something, but I can't tell if she's uncomfortable or if she's just tired, right? And you're like, no, I think she's just tired because I know she was up really late last night preparing for the presentation that we have to give. Or you can say, no, I can tell something seems a little bit off. Maybe we should say something. And again, it's never black and white. And it's always something that's a little bit less obvious. And so as you're deciding what to do, whether or not you want to speak up and say something, you can speak up in a way that's, really great, meaning you can pull Alexia aside and say, hey, I just wanted to check in on you and see if things are okay. Or you can step up in the middle of the meeting and say, something on Alexia's behalf, which is actually taking the agency away from her. But the goal is to teach people it's better to do something than to do nothing. And the best thing to do is to do things in a better way than to do things, and do them, but do them in a wrong way. And so at the end of the experience, as you branch down the storyline, it's like a pick and choose your own storyline ending book, for lack of a better way to describe it. And so the situation is constantly escalating or de-escalating. We're constantly building the relationship to the problem, to the characters, and things can get very visceral and very emotional. We have characters who have emotional breakdowns and will literally start crying, or who will get extremely frustrated and talk about how they can't be productive in their workplace when they have to deal with these things all the time, etc. And so as you're placed in these situations, you're navigating these complex and difficult emotions and relationships, right? At the very end, we give you feedback and we say, you did a really great job on recognizing these 3 things, but here are 2 areas based off of the behaviors and actions you showed within the program where you can do better. And we want you to be a little bit more thoughtful of these behaviors and actions moving forward, because as you go through different training experiences, you'll actually be able to test them, apply them, and see how they help to create a better and safer space for everybody.
I agree. It's very contextual. And from what I know, you consulted survivors of sexual assault and harassment, including actresses and Harvey Weinstein's assault survivors, among which Catherine Kendall and Sarah Mace, as well as experts to help develop this training that you've put together. Can you tell us about the content creation process? How did you create the scenes?
Absolutely. So we did consult with a lot of Harvey Weinstein survivors. We actually had some others that we consulted with that are not named on the project, simply because there are Harvey Weinstein survivors that have not even spoken out. Despite the long, list of many women who have been unfortunately impacted by Harvey's actions and behaviors, there are still some who haven't even spoken out yet, and they were consulted for the project as well. So when we went through the actual creation of the project and of the scenes, we're very thoughtful about how we create the content and how we create the curriculum, what the learning outcomes are, and what the end experience is. So a few things that we think about are, okay, we want to make sure that it's non-triggering, right? So we want to make sure that we are bringing in trauma-informed communications experts to ensure that whatever the material is, whatever the curriculum is, it's not triggering, because when you think about it, so many individuals have been harassed, and there is a large portion of people who have not spoken out. And just because they haven't spoken out doesn't mean that it hasn't happened to them, right? And so when we're putting a lot of people into the headset, we have to act under the assumption that many of the people who are going into the headset have probably gone through something similar. So we brought in trauma-informed communications experts. When we thought about the product design itself, we were thinking about, okay, well, how can we always give users agency? The last thing we want to do is we want to put somebody in a harassment scenario and not give them agency over the outcome, because that can be very hurtful as somebody going into the training, right? You always want to feel like you have control over your environment. So we took that into account when we actually developed the functionality of the program, the way the program works. We ensured that users always had the agency to influence the end outcome. It was never something that was preset for them. And that was actually tied back to the learning outcomes that we wanted to teach. So we actually dug into a lot of research within the space, and we looked at, okay, harassment actually stems from power dynamics. So there are a few different ways that power is displayed. There's a lot of research around the power dynamics behind harassment, what works, what doesn't, the pervasiveness of harassment, most especially when certain relationships or dynamics are present, a lot of the biases around it. So for example, people assume that women in leadership positions are less likely to be harassed, when actually women in leadership positions are more likely to be harassed, because harassment is actually, again, a display of power. So when you have a woman in a leadership position where she's given a level of authority and power, it's an attempt to take the power away from her. So we actually looked at all of these things. We teased out the really important information that we wanted to ensure we were not only incorporating into the storylines, but teaching to users as they're going through the training, right? So some of these biases, etc. And we actually built our storylines around that. When we went through the actual content creation process, we also did a lot of survivor interviews. We brought in a lot of subject matter experts who have either created curriculum before, who have worked, as psychologists, sociologists, etc. So we brought in a lot of subject matter experts who could actually speak to the fact that, yes, this is something that is said verbatim. This is something that I have heard verbatim. This is a true to life depiction. We wanted to ensure that things were not over dramatized. So it actually spoke to the experience of survivors and people who've gone through it. And as we, created the program, we put a lot of users through it who at the end of the day have been through things, situations where they've gone through harassment, so that they could actually speak to, yes, this feels true to life for my experience. And at the end of the program, what that resulted in is a lot of times when we put people through the program, they come out of the experiences and they say, this was so well done. It felt so true to life. I question if this has actually happened in my company because it feels like something I've seen before. And that's our goal, right? That's where the training is effective.